the course of 40 years of being a portrait photographer, I have come across quite a few bosses of airlines, but I've never met anyone as belligerent, confrontational, mercurial as Michael O'Leary of Ryanair. Touched down in Dublin and loaded up my equipment on my trolley and wheeled the lights and the cameras the quarter of a mile to the Ryanair HQ. It was a sort of nondescript building, not at all what I was expecting when you consider that the company is one of Ireland's most successful. When I arrived, the staff were just sitting around eating sandwiches. It was like something out of The Office. Certainly a far cry from the palatial HQ of British Airways when I went to photograph Sir Martin Broughton that same year. There was marble, there were fountains. I had a big lunch in the cafeteria afterwards, a free-course meal. This was very modest, very utilitarian. So I'm chatting to the guys with their sandwiches and I asked them what they do. Turns out they are the in-house advertising team. So Ryanair don't have an advertising agency like most firms of their size. They just have these guys. And their stated, candid admission was that they intend to just create controversy. So they insult the Pope, they do sexist advertising, they do controversial pieces that garner a lot of attention, and this hullabaloo of complaints and so on, they just surf that and get a lot of free publicity, and it seems to work for them. Suddenly, I'm called into the office. I take a deep breath. Here we go. I've had this low-level anxiety, and finally I'm getting to do what I'm here to do. He's sitting there at his desk and he's got his sandwiches just in his lap, and I think his feet might have been up on the table, and just to make conversation I sort of say to him, so are you like Richard Branson? Was it your love of aeroplanes and flight that made you want to start an airline? and he just turns and says, is it fuck? I just want to make money. I think he was a tax consultant before he became an airline entrepreneur. So it made perfect sense, but it didn't inspire confidence in me that I was going to get much shrift. I was going to get short shrift. I was basically in trouble. With that in mind, my next strategy that I often use when I'm sort of struggling, and I use my phone now, but back then I had a little portfolio in a book, sort of A5 book. I sort of pulled it out of my camera bag and I said, would you like to see the type of thing I do? The idea is you're bringing them into your world. Rather than me being in his world, I'm bringing him into my world. And he basically looked at one or two of the spreads. He wasn't interested, and he just turned around and said, what the fuck is this? Take the fucking pictures. You have 5 minutes. I didn't know what to do. I just basically grabbed one of those big model aeroplanes. There were a few of them around the office, and pulled it off its plastic stand and thrust it into his arms. And after that, I think he'd given me an indicator that he wasn't interested in being friends or spending a lot of time luxuriating in this process that he regarded as completely trivial. But after he'd sort of established his boundaries, he was unbelievable. He actually gave me loads of time. Looking at the contacts, they're extraordinary. He was wearing a silly hat. There was a conventional portrait, both shot with my Hasselblad on colour negative film. And then the rest of the series are shot on a Fuji 6.9 rangefinder and he's using the aeroplane in the most phallic way, probably in line with his what his advertising department had told me about creating controversy. He's using the plane as a giant phallus. And then he was sort of sitting on the floor. The photographs I liked most, and I think were used in Newsweek, who commissioned the series, were the pictures outside. I eventually got him outside and he's walking around with this plane. And it's interesting playing with scale. It's always something you can go to. It's a bit of a cheap trick, but it's kind of visually absorbing when you have this kind of contrast. It's like Lilliput. That sense of scale has a visual dynamism, and that's what I was playing with. What's interesting is that I have no recollection of having taken those pictures. I remember taking the pictures outside, but perhaps because those are the pictures that the magazine used. The other pictures, I think what I tend to remember is the dread and anxiety leading up to taking pictures. So it's sort of heightened emotion. And then I remember the sort of sense of relief, being back at the terminal and then on the flight, back in time for tea, back in London. It's over. You know, my adrenaline sort of gradually calming down, feeling a sense of serenity at having achieved what I'd set out to do. But the actual shoot, it's like meditation. It's like being in a flow state. And I tend not to have any memory of actually taking the pictures. The pictures are almost like a secret portal into something that happened that I don't have a clear memory of. It's joyous. It's a sort of lovely opportunity to get right back into that frame of mind that I was in all those years ago. And then the memories adjacent to that of coming back home and being with my family and seeing Fred, and the sense of relief at having gone out into the world, you know, kind of photographically hunter and gathering, and being successful at getting something in a tricky situation. Whilst researching this, I learned that Michael O'Leary has a taxi company which consists of his personal car. And the car is fitted with a meter and is, to all intents and purposes, as far as the authorities concerned, a taxi. And it enables him to use the bus lanes and taxi lanes in his commute from his mansion to his offices at Ryanair. Some people might think that's cheating, but it certainly gives us an interesting insight into someone who has ploughed his own furrow and steadfastly does things his own way. I think we can all learn from that.